You did just come on. If you want to get the outline in the topics page, chapter 5 and chapter 6, I think it might be a little easier to go along, follow along. What I'm going to do is do a review of the chapters at first. And then if there's any questions on that or any of the practice quiz, we'll probably go over practice quiz 5 first, and then we'll do practice quiz 6. Okay, so we could get it all done. All right, we start chapter 5 with price. I should say also, we're not going to be tested on the midpoint. So you don't need to know the midpoint. But he starts with price elasticity and its determinants. And price elasticity is a measure of responsiveness of quantity demand. A measure of responsiveness of quantity demand to the change in price. A measure of responsiveness of quantity demand to the change in price. Inelastic, insensitive. What do I mean by insensitive? Price goes up 10%, quantity demanded is going to go down less than 10%. Elastic, very sensitive. Price goes up, quantity demand goes down a lot. Okay. So again, price elasticity, a measure of responsiveness of quantity demand to change in price. Inelastic, I think insensitive. Okay. Elastic, sensitive. All right. Then he gives like those 4 things, like necessities and luxuries. Necessities are inelastic. All right. Like think insulin. It's a necessity for you to live. So if price goes up, you still need it. So quantity demand might go down, but very little. Okay. Luxuries are elastic. The reason is if the price goes up, you don't need them. So you don't need to buy them. All right. So necessities, inelastic, luxuries, elastic. All right. Close substitutes are elastic. They're sensitive to price change. Why? Because if the price of Coke goes up, you could buy Pepsi, you could go Mountain Dew. There's a lot of different sodas and a lot of different drinks out there. So when you have a lot of substitutes, when price goes up, you could go somewhere else to fulfill that need. All right. This one is a little counterintuitive. Definition of market. A narrowly defined market is more elastic. All right. Because think of it. Cake has many close substitutes, right? There's many desserts that you could have instead of cake. So if the price of cake goes up, you might get a different substitute. However, if you broaden the market, food is inelastic because like it's so broad that if you're going to say like something about food, like if the price of all food goes up, there's not alternatives or many alternatives. So it's inelastic. And then time. Time makes things more elastic, all right, in the long run. Why? Because over time, you could find more substitutes. Example, gas prices go up today. Tomorrow, I have to drive to work. I don't really have an alternative. But over time, I could think of getting an electric car. I could think of carpooling. I could think of biking to school. Shout out to Mr. Hooper. So those are the alternatives there that you could have then in the long run. So necessities and luxuries, necessities inelastic, right? Luxuries elastic. Close substitutes elastic. Narrow market elastic, broad market inelastic. And then time horizons over time more elastic. All right. I'm not going over the midpoint, but there, what I want to give you is the formula for demand elasticity. Now, the same formula for demand elasticity is the same for supply, except instead of quantity demanded, you'd have quantity supplied up top. So remember, with all these formulas, quantities on top. So demand elasticity percentage change of quantity demanded over percentage change in price. Percentage change of quantity demanded over percentage change in price. Now, if they give you numbers, remember the way to find percentage change is the new price minus the old price over the old price. And again, the new quantity over the old quantity minus the new quantity minus the old quantity over the old quantity. Okay? Greater than 1, elastic. Less than 1, inelastic. 1 unit elastic. So remember, here's absolute value. We're not concerned about negative or positive. It's always going to be a negative. Greater than 1, elastic. Less than 1, inelastic. 1 unit elastic. And that makes sense, right? Because if it's less than 1, that means like quantity demanded decreased less than price increased. All right. All right. Now, let's see, could I just, because there's the all right, that is perfectly inelastic. All right. And if you see the elasticity equals 0, that is perfectly inelastic. All right. Now, I think I have, that is perfectly elastic. All right. And that is infinite. All right. Coefficient's infinite. So again, we have perfectly inelastic. All right. Notice quantity would never change here. And then perfectly elastic. And here, like no matter what happens to supply, price stays the same. Okay. All right. Now, the next thing he talks about is the total revenue. All right. Now, remember, if price is up and total revenue's up, it's inelastic. If price is up and total revenue is up, it's inelastic. If price is up and total revenue's down, it's elastic. So the line starts at elastic, unit elastic, and inelastic. And by the way, for a supply curve, it would go elastic as you're going up, unit, and then in at the top. Okay. All right. So again, price up, total revenue up, inelastic. You're going to find that down here. Price up, total revenue down, elastic. You're going to find there. Price up, total revenue doesn't change, unit elastic. And you'll see that in the middle. And all right, let's see. We might have some examples of these as I wash this board up. All right, they always ask this like on the AP exam. I would really bet that it'll be on the unit test. Okay. All right, let's see. So unit elastic here. It's not a good example here. So they're going 22% increase in price leads to a 22. All right, let's see, could I get, so here you go from 300 total revenue, right? 3 times 100, price down. So price down and quantity down, and you have inelastic. So you went from total revenue of 300, 3 times 100, price went down to 2. So 2 times 110 is 220. Total revenue went down. That's inelastic. All right. All right. I went over the curves. All right. Then he talks about income elasticity. So income elasticity is percentage change of quantity demanded over percentage change of income. Percentage change of quantity over the percentage change in income. Remember, quantity is always on the top. A positive is a normal good. A negative is an inferior. A positive is a normal good. A negative is an inferior. Now, just a quick, because even on the other day, someone on the sheet you put in said, what's the difference between a normal and inferior good? A normal good, income up, demand up. Income down, demand down. Normal good, income up, demand up. Income down, demand down. An inferior good, income up, demand down. All right. Normal, income and demand go the same way. Inferior, they go opposites. All right. Cross price elasticity, percentage of quantity demanded for A, percentage change of quantity demanded for A over the percentage change of price for B. The percentage change of quantity demanded for A over the percentage change of price for B. Positive is a substitute, negative is a complement. Positive is a substitute, negative is a complement. Okay, you need to know the formulas. Now, I don't think they're that hard to remember because you just know quantities on top. I mean, income elasticity is always income on the bottom, and the other ones are the prices on the bottom. All right. All right. Computing price elasticity, it's the same as the demand formula. It's the percentage change of quantity supply over the percentage change of price. Okay. And like the graphing of the curves are the same, like perfectly inelastic is like the eye, and do I have it there? And perfectly elastic is flat across. All right. Okay. That was pretty much, I think, chapter 5. All right. I'm going to move on to chapter 6, which is ceilings, basically ceilings. All right. So a price ceiling, maximum price a good can be sold. Maximum price a good can be sold. Now remember, the ceiling's an upside down house. So for it to be binding, it's got to be below the equilibrium. It's a maximum price a good can be sold. All right. And I think like he used rent control a lot for that one. A price floor is the minimum price a good could be sold. A minimum price a good could be sold. And that one, the one that you would think probably the most is minimum wage. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do a binding price ceiling, regular supplying. Okay. And there is your price ceiling. Now, one of the questions they could add, hold on, let's see, do I have another line here? Oh, no. All right. One of the questions they could easily ask is, what is the shortage? It's 50. And anytime you see the ceiling, the first thing, or the floor, is it binding? Yes. Okay. If it's not binding, it just goes back to the equilibrium. All right. And I'm going to even do this. All right. I'm going to just put this in here for a second. Okay. All right. So the first thing, is it binding? Here it is. If it wasn't binding and it was above the equilibrium, it would just be a $3 price and $100. All right. Do we have a shortage or a surplus? All right. Well, people want 125 and we only have 75. So we have a shortage. Okay. All right. How many are we going to sell? Well, people want 125, but we only have 75. So we're only going to sell 75. All right. So they could also ask you, what happened to expenditures or total revenue after the price ceiling? All right, before the price ceiling, total revenue, price times quantity, 3 times 100 is 300. After the price ceiling, 2 times 75 is 150. So total revenue went down 150. All right. So those are the types of questions that they could ask you here. Okay, I'm going to erase this, and I'm assuming the next thing is a price floor. All right, let's see what we got. All right, non-binding. Okay, this is a non-binding. So if they asked you here, what's the price and quantity, it'd be price 3, quantity 100. If they asked you, is there a shortage or surplus, there's none. Quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. If they ask you what's determining, like rationing, that's price. Price is determining. What was the 100? The 100 was the quantity at the equilibrium, Sebastian.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. So they're going to go to rent control here. And that's going to be the example they use of price floors. All right. Now, one thing about rent control, and again, with a lot of these, in the short run, they're inelastic. Okay. Why? Because even if there's apartments with cheaper prices, which there is here, because right, the equilibrium is, because the floor is below the equilibrium, I'm in a lease. I can't leave my apartment, so I can't take advantage of it. So in the short run, you're going to have something like rent control being more inelastic. In the long run, especially, and this isn't a supply thing, but especially with supply, the long run becomes more elastic. And I think they show that in rent control here, both. Now, why is the supply in the short run perfectly inelastic? Because like, what are landlords going to do? Like, all right, they can't just knock down their buildings. They can't break their leases. So they're stuck. But in the long run, they could stop supplying. Like, they can knock down their buildings. They don't have to lease their apartments. So in the long run, both of these become more elastic, and you see a big shortage. One thing to also remember here is a lot of times the quality of the apartments go down. And by that, I mean, landlords are making less money, so they put less into maintenance. Okay. All right. Now, remember again, in this price ceiling, it's rent control. It is underneath there. All right. All right. Now, here's a price floor that's not binding. So we're getting to price floors. It would be 3 and 100. Okay. Right. Because the floor is below the equilibrium. So it's not binding. All right. Now we got a binding price floor. It's above the equilibrium. All right. Let's go with questions they could ask here. Let me get my eraser out. All right. The first is it a shortage or a surplus? We look, we're supplying 120, people only demanding 80. So we have a surplus of 40. Okay. And remember, the surplus and shortages are determined from supply, from like the quantity supplied minus quantity demanded. The equilibrium doesn't come in for shortages. Now I'm going to go down and give us an equilibrium of 100 here, because they could ask this question again. Okay. They could say, what happened to expenditures after the price floor? Well, before the price floor, consumers were spending $3 and buying 100. So that's 100 ice cream cones. That's 300. Now we put the price floor in, they're spending 4, but they're only selling 80. Well, hold it, we're supplying 120. Yeah, but people only want 80. So that's 3, so expenditures are 320. So expenditures increase by 20 over the price floor, okay? Now, a tricky question they could ask for both is what happens now if the government releases the price floor, meaning the government just says the price floor no longer exists, it's not binding. All right, well, what's going to happen? Supply is going to decrease, right? Because it's going to go to the equilibrium. And demand is going to increase because we're going to both go, quantity demanded is going to increase and quantity supplied is going to decrease because we're going to both go to 100. We're going to both go back to the equilibrium. All right, here, Sebastian, yeah, you're only supplying here, you're only demanding 80, so people only want 80. So yeah, the demand does come first, and because the ceiling is below, supply comes first. So yeah, they do swap like that. Okay. And again, just think of it here. If people are only demanding 80, you're only going to sell 80. Here, if it was below, if you're only supplying 80, that's all that people could buy. Okay. Okay. So that was the ceilings and okay. Then he talks about like let's see, do I have this graph? The lines at the gas pumps. Because I might have that graph. No. All right. No, I don't have the graph. All right. But just remember they put the price ceiling on, and I think I talked to you about this in class. They put the price ceiling on, and one of the problems was long lines, less supply, shortage. Okay. All right. He then talks about how price floors affect market outcomes. So a price floor, it's binding above the equilibrium. It increases prices. It increases quantity supply. So price floor above the equilibrium to be binding, increases price, increases quantity supply, decreases quantity demand, is inefficient because it has deadweight loss. Okay. And you're going to sell less. Okay. All right. Then he talked about minimum wage, and all minimum wage is a binding price floor, and there it is. Now, here's what happens with minimum wage, right? Workers are the supply. Companies demand workers, so they're the demand. So when minimum wage goes up, notice more people want to work, but companies want less workers. That gap would be unemployment. All right. So what we would call a surplus here would be unemployment. Right. So who does minimum wage help? It helps the workers that still have jobs, but the workers who get laid off, because notice, and I'm going to just put some numbers here again, because I think sometimes it's easier. All right. So say there were 50 people working at $10 an hour. Well, let's say minimum wage is $10 an hour. And let's just say 50 people were working at $8 an hour. Okay. Now at $10 an hour, we have 25 people working. But we have 75 people wanting jobs. All right. So the unemployment would be 75 people looking for jobs, 25 working. So 50 people would be unemployed. You're employing 25 less than before you had the minimum wage. All right. Notice total income used to be 88 times 50, which is 400. Now even total income is down because even though people are getting $10, only 25 are working. All right. All right. All right. The last thing in the chapter, and then I'll take any questions anyone has, is the tax. Let me see, do I have a good graph? You're not going to need the demand to know the demand tax. So let's just do the supply. All right. All right. Now, let's see, do I have, well, yes. All right. Remember, to find the tax, it's the difference between the two supply curves. You take the old equilibrium down. So it's 330. Now I go across this 280. 330 minus 280. The tax is 50 cents. How much are the consumers going to pay of that tax? Well, they were paying $3, and now they're paying 330, so they're going to pay 30 cents. Okay. If it was a 50 cents tax and the consumers are paying 30, the producers must be paying 20. All right. All right. So I'm going to just slowly go over that again. How do I find my tax? I go from the new surplus, the new equilibrium, down to the old supply curve. And sorry that this doesn't go. I go across. There's my tax revenue box. And it was from 330 to 280. So the total tax is 50 cents. Now, the old equilibrium was $3, right? $3. Now it's 330. So the consumers are paying 30 cents. The consumers are paying 30 and the total tax is 50. That's 20 cents. All right. The last thing they could ask you is, what's the tax revenue? Well, we're selling 90. The tax is 50 cents. 90 times 50 cents is $45. Okay. All right. I am open to any questions. I am going to take this down and try to at least first see, could I get chapter 5 practice quiz up? And if anyone has any questions on chapter 5's practice quiz or anything else, but I don't want to do chapter 6 yet. If you have any questions on chapter 5, if you want to just type them in, the number, or if you have any other questions, you could turn on your mic or type it in. Number 2, if the cross price elasticity is positive, Austin, it's going to be a substitute. And if it's negative, it's going to be a complement. But cross price can only tell substitutes and complements. So normal goods, inferior goods, Giffen goods, they cannot be the answer. All right. So you're in a 50-50, but positive coefficient substitute. So Austin, what I'd be prepared for is what that same question, except them asking a negative. Okay, because you're not going to get the same question probably. So I'd be prepared for that. All right. Are you good with that, Austin? Okay. Any other questions on practice quiz 5? Eight. Okay. All right. Let's scroll down to question 8. Let's see. You don't want that. I might have to just shut the chat here for a second to help me scroll down. All right. Let's get down a little more. All right, question 8. I gotta look at my sheet because I have trouble seeing. All right, refer to scenario 5.3. All right, let's see what 5.3. All right, milk has an inelastic demand and beef has an elastic demand. Suppose that, all right, so infertility decreases the population of dairy cows and the population of beef cattle by 50%. All right, both of those for number 8 would be left with supply. I'll do number 8, then I'll scroll back to number 6. Both of those for number 8 would be leftward supply shifts, which would decrease the quantity. Okay. All right. I think I know what number 6 is going to be if you ask. A key to, the price elasticity time for supply, because the longer you have time, the more substitutes and the more things suppliers could change. And like, even if you think of rent control, like the supply of housing is going to be like perfectly inelastic in the short run, but in the long run, they can knock down the buildings. They could do something else with the land. They don't have to rent the apartments, like when new leases come up. So there's things you could do in the long run. So in the long run, both supply and demand become more elastic. And that's a lot to do with substitutes. Does that make sense to you, Andrew? Okay. Anything else on this one? On 5. Okay. I am going to then put up practice quiz 6. Okay. All right. Any questions on practice quiz 6? All right, number 6. I don't even know, Ken. Tommy, can you see practice 6, the question 6? On here? Okay. All right. Okay, this is a good question. So if the government review, all right, so I'm going to just graph it here. And pardon me, because these are not always easy. All right, so if the government removes a binding price ceiling, so the binding price ceiling is going to be below. So if the government removes it, they're both going to go, they're both going to move towards the equilibrium. Okay. All right. So now if the government moves it, we're going to go to the equilibrium. So Tommy, do you realize, you see why price goes up, right? From here, because we're going to go to the equilibrium here. Okay. Now we're going to move from here. So where it was quantity supplied, say we were selling 50, or I'm going to make it 5, we're going to move to the equilibrium where we're now selling 10. All right, so price up, and what does it say? Increase the quantity sold in. So the price paid by the buyer, A. Does that make sense to you why A is? See, Beth, so for a graph, if the lines are on the equilibrium, I mean, if the price ceiling or the price floor is on the equilibrium, No, it's just going to be the same as the equilibrium. Any other questions on practice quiz 6? And there'll be 15 multiple choice tomorrow, I'm pretty sure. If there is a non-binding, if a price ceiling is above the equilibrium, it is non-binding. Yes, Austin. Because it's an upside down house. So for it to be binding, it has to be, the ceiling has to be below and the floor has to be above. And if it's non-binding, you just pretend like it's not there and you use the equilibrium. The answer key to what, Sebastian? I think, isn't the answer key included on the practice quizzes? They're at the end, Seabass. They're at
Oh,
the end.
okay. Yeah, sorry, I didn't see it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, for a second, I thought I might not have done it. Okay. Any other questions people have? All right. I think I went over a lot of the scenarios they could ask you, you know, on the quizzes. Question 12. All right. Let's see, can I scroll down? 12. All right. All right, so they're asking you, the first thing I got to do is, all right, the equilibrium is $3. How do I know that? Because 6 equals 6, right? So the equilibrium is $3. So they impose a price floor of $5. That's going to be above the equilibrium. So I know, right, my price floor is binding, right? What will be the size of the surplus? All right, at $5, quantity demanded is 2 and quantity supplied is 10. So the surplus will be 8. Does that make sense, Austin? Yes. Okay. Now, like on that type thing, say they suppose the government imposes a price floor of $1. All right, well, then it wouldn't be binding, and the answer would be 0. There would be no surplus because it would go back to 3, and 6 minus 6 would be 0. Okay. Any other questions anyone has? Number 11. Yes, number 11. Okay, so again, Noah, the first thing I'm going to do is find the equilibrium where 6 equals 6, which is $3. For a price floor to be binding, it has to be above $3. So 0 is no good, 1's no good, 2's no good. So it's got to be E4 because it's the only one over $3. Now, for everyone, that same chart's going to be on your actual test. So right now, I've kind of told you the equilibrium is $3, where 6 equals 6. All right. So you're going to know floors for them to be binding are going to have to be above $3 and ceilings are going to have to be below. Noah, did that make sense to you? Okay. I know sometimes on these, I talk at 98 miles an hour. So, all right. There were no graphs. So I think mainly the questions are going to be like we have in here. And any other question anyone has?
Can you go over like how the price floors affect the market outcomes? It's like on the chapter 6 outline. It's not the quiz.
How price floors. Yeah, I'll be in room 100 tomorrow. Price floors. Yeah, so Okay. And I'm sorry I'm not labeling things, but it's very hard for me. So here's your equilibrium, right? So I put a price floor, it has to be above the equilibrium. So what you're gonna get here is a surplus, right? So you're gonna get a surplus, that's the first thing. The second thing, you're gonna get an increase in prices. So price increase. The third thing is you're gonna sell less, because you used to say sell 50. But now you can only sell 25. Or in the case of minimum wage, 50 people used to work and now only 25. Because even though, say, wages went up, companies only want 25 workers. Or even though the price of corn went up, people are only buying 25 packs of corn and they used to buy 50. So price up, quantity down. And I would say that that is the impact of price floors on the market. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything that you want? Okay, if you guys have no more questions, I will be in room 100 tomorrow